What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 482 of #AskGSM here today for Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great Wednesday so far. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself, and drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. We'll start off with Micah Does It from YouTube. The first question was, should Seth Rollins and Pretty Deadly become a heel faction in WWE on the main roster? No thanks. I mean, you're probably saying that because they both kind of have similarly, eccentric personalities, dress similarly. That's where the similarities end. Rollins is currently a babyface. Pretty Deadly are great on their own. They don't need a faction. I think they've really been the standouts of NXT for the last year now in that tag team division. They've been excellent. Now that they've had runs as NXT UK Tag Team Champions, NXT Tag Team Champions, I'm not really sure how much more they can do on NXT, and having been there for about a year now, they've been in WWE for several years, probably dating back to 2019, 2020. It's time for them to get the call up, probably after WrestleMania. On either show, I think they would do well, and they need more tag teams on the main roster anyway. So, no, they don't need to be in a faction. You said a heel faction. Rollins is perfectly fine as a face right now, just turning a couple of months ago. No, they don't really need each other, and both entities are on their own. Maybe they can interact at some point on the main roster if they continue to dress in eccentric fashion, but otherwise, I don't think they need a heel faction together. Micah's second question, do you think WWE will put Umaga in the Hall of Fame, and who should induct him? I do think he is probably going to be going into the Hall of Fame. I have no issue with him going into the Hall of Fame. Listen, they've inducted so many people. We have this argument and debate every year. Who's Hall of Fame worthy? And as I've always said, it really was in the mind of one man, Vince McMahon, and now it's really Triple H. And I guess maybe Vince, now that Vince is back as chairman, I'm not sure if he's going to have any say in who goes into the Hall of Fame, if it's going to be his choice, Triple H. I would assume Triple H's choice, but regardless, and it's really more a matter of who they see Hall of Fame as being Hall of Fame worthy. And people that are in the Hall of Fame already, you can't take it back. They're in, they're in. Umaga, to me, would be Hall of Fame worthy. I mean, he had multiple reigns as Intercontinental Champion and was a very memorable part of the WWE product, I would say, for a few years there. I mean, he debuted in 2006. He was also part of the 3-minute warning before that. But debuting in 2006 as Umaga, reigning as Intercontinental Champion, he was a staple on Raw throughout 2006, 2007 as well. That great last man standing match with John Cena at the Royal Rumble in 2007. Went on to reign as champion in 2007, obviously. In 2008, he was throughout the show. He was involved as a pretty, he was a staple on the show throughout 2008 and throughout 2009 a little bit as well before getting released in mid-2009. So he wasn't there for very long, but Umaga was a great character, successful enough. I mean, listen, if the fucking Godfather, who had more characters and had a longer run in WWE than Umaga, if he can get in there and people like that, then, Coco Beware, why not Umaga, honestly? So Umaga is also involved in the WWE games the last couple of years. I don't think that's a coincidence. They're putting him in there for a reason. With the whole bloodline thing now at its height, I don't think Rousey is Hall of Fame worthy personally, but I think Umaga could probably go in. This year would be great with the bloodline storyline culminating. The Rock, should go into the Hall of Fame at some point. He won't be at Mania this year, but it would be cool to see Umaga in there. I could totally see him not only just going in, but going in this year. And who would induct him? Probably the Usos. The Usos have shouted him out many times with their moves, and I don't know if Solo is much of a wordsmith. I'm not sure if he would go into the Hall of Fame, and not go into the Hall of Fame, but induct Umaga and be the one to cut a speech for him. But it probably would be the Usos either inducting him or accepting it on his behalf or whatever, given that they're family and they were always really close to Umaga. I don't know if Roman would break character to do the speech for Umaga, but probably someone from the Anoa'i family. And honestly, like I said, it could happen this year. I could totally see that happening. Nike Only from YouTube, their first question was, or their only question for this week, they ask, on this past week's edition of Monday Night Raw, WWE made a women's tag team match between Damage Control and Lita and Becky Lynch. My question is, if Becky Lynch and Lita win the titles on next week's Raw, do you see WWE doing Lita and Lynch versus Shayna and Ronda Rousey at WrestleMania for the women's tag team titles? I didn't even think about that possibility. I figured Damage Control, who was, I guess, reportedly currently scheduled to face Ronda and Shayna at Mania. I assume that they're going to retain against Lita and Lynch next week. I'm not really sure what the plan is, honestly. Because there's 3 different matches, 3 different routes they can go with this, if not other possibilities. But these are the 3 most likely. What you just mentioned with Lita and Lynch against Shayna and Ronda, which honestly I like. It does come together a bit quickly, but it gets Becky Lynch in a big match in Mania. We get Ronda and Becky not in a singles match, but in a tag team match, which I'm not really sure if there's any appeal there, but it's a possibility. Lynch also has history with Shayna from WrestleMania 3 years ago, so that would be a possibility. It would allow Becky Lynch to become champion again in the tag team title scene, which would be cool. For a little bit teaming with Lita, getting a little run out of Lita would be cool. I assume Shayna and Ronda would win. So you get that. I just don't know what becomes of Bayley in that situation and the rest of Damage Control. What do they do? Are they in a fucking battle royal? I mean, it's kind of... The rest of... I like Io and I like Dakota. It's more about Bayley, though. I mean, she's mentioned on Twitter she had no Mania match for the last 2 years. You know, she was hurt last year, but the year before that, they just had nothing for her. And that was the same woman who was champion for over a year, from 2019 to 2020, and then they had nothing for her to do at WrestleMania, which is pretty shitty. I don't want her to be in that same situation this year, especially after missing Mania last year. And then in 2020, after the great run she was having as a heel, she wrestled in front of no fans. So, I mean, she really hasn't had... I mean, she's had her Mania moment retaining the Raw Women's title at Mania 33, but she wasn't at Mania 32, 34. She was in a fucking Battle Royal, didn't win, so... She deserves to be Mania in front of fans this year. I don't mind that match, though. The other possibility is what I want to see. All of Damage Control versus Becky, Lita, and Trish. And I still think Trish is going to get involved. There was talk of her being on Raw this week. She was there. They didn't use her. I would be surprised if they didn't end up using her at all. I feel like with Lita, she wasn't used at Raw 30. I think they're just pushing back the storyline. Because Becky and Bayley wasn't able to happen on Raw at Raw 30. We probably would have gotten the 6th woman at Elimination Chamber or this week on Raw or whatever, but they had to push everything back. That, to me, is the Mania match. Trish, Lita, and Becky versus all of Damage Control. The feud is there. It makes sense. Again, what do you do with Ronda and Shayna? I have no fucking clue. And then the other possibility is Shayna and Ronda versus Damage Control, but then what do you do? Do you do Becky and... I guess that's probably the most likely. Damage Control versus Shayna and Ronda, and then doing Bayley and Becky one more time, but I just don't really care to see that. I don't want to see them involved in the Raw Women's Championship match either. So, there's pros and cons to each scenario. The match you pitched, though, Lita and Becky versus Shayna and Ronda, is not a bad idea, though. I just don't know what you do with Bayley. Billy's question from YouTube, do you see Brock Lesnar versus Bobby Lashley at Mania? This week it was teased that this Bobby feud isn't over, with potentially facing Omos next week on Raw, as well as Bray Wyatt in the background to face him or Bobby. Personally, Brock versus Omos has less appeal than Maximum Male Models versus Brock. Dude, that's another thing, too. I have no fucking clue what's going on to those guys as well. The same thing with the women's tag title picture and Becky and Bayley. I don't know what's going on with Brock and Bobby. I was pretty adamant on getting Brock and Bobby again at Mania, blowing it off there. Why would you blow it off on the pay-per-view right before Mania? If the other matches we might get instead make no fucking sense. Bobby and Bray is fresh, I guess. Does it really do much for me? No. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. Brock and Omos is even worse. That sounds fucking awful, like you said. I'd rather see Brock in there squashing some loser. I mean, he would probably squash Omos, but Omos just isn't good. He's not a threat. He's not undefeated. It honestly probably would have made more sense last year when Omos was still undefeated and had never been beaten one-on-one before, but the guy's been beaten a bunch and no one really gives a fuck about the guy, so I just don't really care. I would rather see Brock and Bobby again at Mania. I don't know what you do with Bray. I thought he would face Uncle Howdy. Do I care about that? No, but at least that makes sense. Omos does not need a Mania match. Just put the guy in the fucking Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal on the SmackDown before Mania. Have him win that if you want. The guy's massive. Again, who gives a shit? So I would rather see Brock and Bobby. The ultimate match, if you want Bray in there, would be Brock, Bobby, and Bray. Even that sounds like a train wreck, but because I don't think Bray really needs to be in there with either guy, and I don't think he would win anyway. So I don't know what you're doing with any of those guys, but honestly, the worst case scenario would be Brock and Omos. I don't even like Brock and Bray facing each other, but Brock and Omos is like the worst possible timeline possibility. That sounds awful. So I really hope that's not happening. But it might. I know Meltzer said it was probably indeed scheduled to happen, so hopefully not. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the Twitter machine and on YouTube, Real Honesty with John Ritland. Check out his content, his great work all the time. John from the Twitter machine asks, about Elimination Chamber and the crowd reactions. Do you think there's any chance WWE puts the main singles title on Sami Zayn within the next year? I do. This is why I'm not upset about him losing an Elimination Chamber. He didn't need to win a chamber. He shouldn't have won a chamber. And I'll continue to say this until the cows come home. I don't think putting the belt on him before Mania would have been smart. Because for as great as that would have been, everyone, oh, this is awesome. No one would have given a fuck about WrestleMania. Zayn, Roman, and Cody in a triple threat, especially with Sami as the champion, honestly, that doesn't appeal to me at all. Cody would have been booed. Roman challenging just sounds weird, and Sami defending is just bizarre to me. I just don't like that idea at all. That just sounds terrible. So I'm glad they're not doing that. Sami being even in the match at Mania. He already lost at Elimination Chamber. Why would you give him another shot at Mania? I know Bryan, it's like, Bryan lost at Elimination Chamber in 2021, but he got another shot at Mania. Yeah, but at Elimination Chamber, it didn't make sense for him to win then. It didn't even make sense for him to win at WrestleMania. With Daniel Bryan, I mean, it would have been fine if he won, I guess, and ended Roman's run 2 years sooner than it will at Mania 33 or Mania 39 or whatever the fuck we're on now. But with Bryan, it's like, yeah, he lost the Chamber, got another shot at Mania. Same thing with Kofi. Like with Kofi, he was another example. He lost at Elimination Chamber, but got another shot at Mania and won there. That was because that was the right time for him to win. With Sami, the right time for him to win would have been a Chamber. He didn't win. He shouldn't have won a Chamber, and now it's over. But again, I'm not upset because I still think Sami can be champion at some point. It's not now or never with Sami Zayn. He can always win at some other point. And I've always said this, at some point, Cody will be a heel. And it shouldn't happen anytime soon. He's got a lot of momentum as a babyface. You can turn Cody when the time comes for it, when the fans inevitably turn on him, because that's how fickle fans are. When that time comes, you can have Sami Chase go back to that promo they cut on Raw together a couple of weeks ago, and have Sami be the one to dethrone Cody, whether it be at Mania next year or at some point between now and then. Sami is popular enough, especially as a babyface. If the booking is as strong as it's been with Sami so far, if Triple H can keep that going, tag team champion or not, with that at some point within the next year, Sami can absolutely be champion. The moment won't be as grand as was in Chamber, but he shouldn't have won at Chamber anyway. You got to think bigger picture. Bigger picture is Roman losing at Mania, ideally to Cody Rhodes. So yes, I do think Sami can be champion, and I do think it can happen within the next year. Will it? I don't know. I'm not mapping this out already. We don't even know if Roman's going to lose at WrestleMania. It may not. I wouldn't have Sami beat Roman, though, because I feel like the time would have been to do that would have been a Chamber. But him beating Cody, honestly, would be great. A heel Cody versus babyface Sami at some point would be amazing. So hopefully at some point we do get that. Down the road, that is. His second question, so the ratings for Rampage have been pretty dire lately, with the February 10th episode getting 375,000 viewers, and last Friday's episode getting 287,000 viewers. I know they were in a different time slot last week, but is there any saving this show? I don't know if there's any saving it. Honestly, the show is what it is. I don't think it's ever going to get above a certain amount. 500,000 a year ago is bad, but now they're getting, like you said, 287,000 is awful. They were in a different time slot. That is the lowest rating for Rampage ever. Rampage has been on different days in different time slots at various points in the last year and a half, and has never gotten that low of a rating. Rampage has been at 10 p.m. after SmackDown since the beginning, but they've also been at 7 p.m. on different days. They've been at 4 p.m. on Fridays. They've been on Saturdays. They've been on, were they on Thursdays at any point? No, they've been on Fridays and Saturdays at different points. All of those shows, even on Black fucking Friday at 4 p.m., I believe has gotten higher ratings than the Rampage we got last week at 7 p.m. And honestly, it should be at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. is a much better time slot for Rampage. 10 p.m. sucks. After SmackDown, sucks. Beforehand, much better. I don't know why that would affect the ratings all that much anyway. I know they want to kind of capitalize off the wrestling audience, but how many people are really switching from SmackDown to Rampage? I mean, aside from the diehards, which I guess is what that is. I know AEW fans are all diehards, but you understand what I'm saying. I just don't really care to watch the show at 10 p.m., personally. 7 p.m. is much more bearable. Either way, even switching to a different time slot at this point would not save the show. Even putting more star power on the show would help, but it would not save the show. Rampage, for the last year and a half, has been established what it is. They got their highest rating ever, over 1 million and 1.3 million people with CM Punk. And the show was pretty good after that, but it still wasn't overly important, and they lost all of that momentum, and it wasn't even remotely close to getting those same numbers again. And it has been established as a B show, if not a C show, with nothing really of note happening. Last week's show was good, but not great. And the show has not felt important in ages. I have not watched a live Rampage in, I don't even know, 6 months. I always watch it either later that night or the next day or days later. I just do not give a fuck about Rampage. I'm sorry. So yeah, I honestly don't really know what they did, what can save the show. I don't think anything can save the show at this point. It's like with NXT. I don't think NXT is ever going to get beyond a certain amount of people. It just is what it is at this point. Rampage, you can put all the star power that you want. It might increase the ratings by a couple 100,000, by maybe up to 500,000. I feel like that's the ceiling for Rampage. It has been established as a B-level show with nothing of note happening. And regardless of what you do with the show going forward, for a lot of people, it is what it is, and that's not going to change because it's been long enough. At Kyle Rochelle 19 from Twitter, his question was, should Becky Lynch and Lita wait to do the tag team title match at WrestleMania? Or if they win next week, it could solve two things, Becky at WrestleMania and a match with Ronda Rousey. Where does that leave Bayley? Like you said, I like the idea of Becky and Lita versus Ronda and Shayna, but where does that leave Damage Control? Like I said, I love Dakota and Io. They're not really that important to be on the Mania card. It's not really that big of a deal. They've been just, background players in Damage Control. It's more about Bayley to me. It's more about Bayley getting a Mania match after being fucked over the last couple of years, not having a match at Mania in front of fans since 2019, which is crazy. Was she even on that show? Or she was. I'm sorry. I talked about the Mania moments and shit. I forgot about that one. They walked into Mania that year as tag team champions. That was a very quick match, and they lost the tag team titles on that show. Bayley's only won one match, or she's won 2 matches of Mania, if we're including 36. That one just wasn't in front of fans. So she really hasn't had the best string of luck at Mania for the last couple of years now. She deserves a match at Mania. I just don't know what you do. You could do Becky and Bayley 3. I just don't really care to see it, to be honest. I know they're 1 win apiece. Bayley beat Becky on Raw back in December. Becky beat Bayley on Raw earlier this month. So I know they're 2 wins, or they're 1 win apiece. You could do the rubber match of Mania. It just, without any stakes, even with a stipulation, I just don't really care. But at least it would get Bayley on the show. So again, a lot of pros and cons. I don't really know what they should do. I'm looking forward to seeing how they handle it, though, in the weeks ahead. I honestly, personally believe I don't really care about Ronda and Shayna facing Becky at Mania. I don't really care about that. I think best case scenario would be Trish, Lita, Becky versus all of Damage Control. Could you do a situation where Dakota and Io... I mean, why would you have Bayley teaming with Ronda and Shayna and not her own faction? That just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't know. I guess that would get everyone in one match, and I would like to see that. That would be cool. But again, what happens to Dakota and Io? I mean, it's not really that big of a deal, but logically, why would Bayley team with Ronda and Shayna and not her own partners? Unless she breaks up the group or whatever. I don't know. At Iwagu91... his first question was, if Roman Reigns does lose the world titles to Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania, what direction will he go from there? We kind of talked about this a little bit last week, because I think it was either you or someone else that asked, who do you have Paul Heyman represent after Roman Reigns? I don't think Roman and Paul need to go anywhere after Mania. They could still be an item because they've just been amazing together. I wouldn't necessarily break that up. I've always envisioned after Roman loses the championships, going away for a while, coming back, being a babyface, opposing the Bloodline, reuniting with Rollins against the Usos and Solo or whatever. As sexy as that would be, the only issue with it is that the whole story is about Jay breaking off from the Bloodline. Jay sticking in the Bloodline and leading it or whatever as a heel just doesn't make any sense. I just feel like it's got to be Jay. At this point, I'm convinced, especially after everything they've done with Jay, especially lately, he's got to leave Roman and be a babyface, and Roman and Jay is the match they should do at SummerSlam. Non-title, no, Roman hopefully loses a Mania, and Jay can finally beat Roman, or at least face him, whatever. He has to beat Roman at some point, I feel like. But either way, Roman, this is what I would do. I'm not saying he is winning at Mania, Cody that is, because he could totally lose. It's definitely possible if they want to get Roman to 1,000 days. I would have, with Cody Rhodes, I would have him beat Roman Reigns at Mania. He goes on to defend the title, breaks up the 2 titles, whatever. Roman disappears for a while. I know he's a part-timer. He's been gone at various points anyway. But for an extended period for more than a month. We don't see Roman on the show for a good 3 or 4 months. He comes back for SummerSlam, and he faces Jey Uso there. He comes back after Money in the Bank, and maybe he just beats the shit out of Jey, saying, you try to take over my group in my absence. Jey beats the shit out of him. Maybe Jay turns on him before Roman leaves, I don't know. And then you do the match at SummerSlam. So that's what I would do. Roman should not be in the title picture after he loses the titles. keep him away from the title for a while, both titles for a while, go back to it in a year or two from now. It'll probably be before 2 years, probably within a year or so, he'll be back in the title picture, but not anytime soon. So that's what I would do. I know people are saying, I just talked about this with Randy Cruz on his show, but I would not turn Roman face just because it's not a bad idea, but two issues with that. One, Jey Uso should be the babyface, and two, you already have a lot of top solidified, established babyfaces on Raw and SmackDown. They have a lot of babyfaces, like top-tier babyfaces. They have Drew on SmackDown, who I know is doing like the tag team thing with Sheamus, but he's still a top babyface. Sheamus is kind of one, but not really. But more so Drew. You got him. You got Bray Wyatt. On Raw, you have Cody Rhodes. Sami Zayn can be that guy. Kevin Owens is kind of a top babyface. They have a lot of established babyfaces. Rollins being another one. There's various ones. They don't really need anyone else in that spot. They need more heels, and Roman is kind of still needed on the heel side unless something drastically changes after Mania. They need more heels. Jay White can help out with that if he comes in after Mania. But Roman Reigns should not turn, keep Jey Uso face, and go in that direction. His next question, your thoughts on Time Machine. I think if you asked me this before, and you're not talking about Back to the Future, you're talking about the trio of Kushida and the Motor City Machine Guns and Impact. I love it. I really love it. I've always dreamed of a scenario where we would get Kushida with the Motor City Machine Guns, and now we're getting an Impact, which is really fucking cool. Because Kushida, or Alex Shelley, has teamed in the past in Japan with Kushida, and then as the Motor City Machine Guns is teamed with Chris Sabin. So it's the best of both worlds. Kushida, Sabin, Shelley, really fucking cool. They're a great trio, and I think on Friday, actually, this Friday, No Surrender, Impact's next, Impact Plus special, they're facing, I think, Ace Austin, Chris Bay, and Kenta, which sounds fucking sexy. So I love the pairing of Time Machine. I hope it sticks around for a while. I would love to see them get a one-off in AEW for the trios titles. I think you've said that before. I think that'd be cool. I don't think they're all going to AEW. They'd be lost in the shuffle, but that would be a great match with them against the Elite for a one-off in AEW. Their next question: do you consider T.J. Perkins versus Kota Ibushi the best match of the Cruiserweight Classic? No, I don't actually. The match that stands out to me the most, and there were a lot of amazing matches: Gargano and Ciampa. Even the finals of TJP versus Grand Metalik was a great match. You had that. You had Brian Kendrick in there with Ibushi, I think, which was great. Zack Sabre Jr. had a great match, I think, with Grand Metalik. So a lot of great matches. The one that stands out to me the most, honestly, that I would go back and watch more than any other, was Kota Ibushi versus Cedric Alexander. That, to me, cemented Cedric as a star. He has not been booked as a star in the main roster. But that was the best match of his entire WWE career. And it came from Kota. That match was in-fucking-credible. So that, to me, was the best match of the Cruiserweight Classic. You can disagree. Perkins and Kota was great, but I just think Kota and Cedric was better in the, I think it was the second round of the tournament. Noob_N_Co TV. The first question was, with Asuka now facing Bianca Belair at WrestleMania, is Asuka going to be the heel or the face in her feud with Bianca? If they have a clear dynamic, they don't really need one. Bianca is not going to be the heel. I know people are saying, oh, she's stale, turn her heel. I wouldn't turn Bianca heel before Mania. I think, if anything, what should turn her heel is either losing the championship and then becoming the EST of WWE again, which she kind of already is, but the whole, bitch character that she was in NXT, over the top and stuff, she was great in that role as well. Either losing the title or being desperate to retain the title in the same way that Becky was desperate to beat her for the belt. So I would turn Bianca heel that way. I'm not even really sure she needs to turn heel. But Asuka, I think, should be the heel. If anything, she should be the heel. Or a tweener or whatever. Asuka is more of this badass character. She doesn't need to be going around kissing babies and shit. It seems like Asuka's been the babyface since coming back. She has faced, so far, Chelsea Green. She has faced Nikki Cross, and she's facing Carmella next week. She's kind of like a babyface so far. But she can be a heel, and it's perfectly fine. So, if anything, I would lean towards heel with Asuka. But you can still have a tweener versus face or a face versus face dynamic. And I would still be interested because this version of Asuka so far has been really cool. And I'm more on board with this match than any other at WrestleMania with the Raw Women's Championship. Their second question, your thoughts on Tony Khan's outrage when Ariel Helwani appeared on TV. Do you think it's another sign of the downfall of AEW? No, I don't think it has anything to do with the downfall of AEW. I think it's just embarrassing all around. I actually really like Ariel. I think Ariel's great. I actually had a chance to finally meet him at the post-show press conference after chamber over the weekend when I was there. And check it out if you haven't already. I'm on the YouTube channel, on WWE's channel, and I'm on Peacock and shit asking questions, which was cool. So I finally met Ariel. He's a very nice guy. I don't think he needs to be out there acting like the way that he is. Listen, I know a lot of people do it, and it's more a matter of preference. It's not the right or wrong thing to do. A lot of people do it where they clap back at people that talk shit to them. If he wants to do that, that's his prerogative. I wouldn't do that personally. I mean, him just kind of going off the way that he did wasn't exactly necessary. Him kind of, shit-talking the interview he did with Tony, I didn't really have a major issue with that. I don't think it was smart to burn a bridge or sever ties with AEW in that way, because now Tony Khan took it personally. I honestly think it looks worse for Tony than it does for Ariel. Ariel working with WWE or whatever, the whole unbiased journalist thing, yeah, he works with them, but I think honestly if AEW presented him a similar opportunity, he would do the exact same thing. He doesn't work for WWE. He did get paid for his appearance at SmackDown and shit, but other than that, I mean, if AEW paid him to do something similar. The thing with Helwani, too, is that I listen to his show sometimes. He's very fair with his coverage. I mean, he shits on WWE when they do something dumb. And he also thought Sammy should have won in the Elimination Chamber, which was the wrong outcome. But like I said earlier. But he's also praised AEW. He says, listen, I think the AEW product is better than WWE's. Like, I think people forget about that stuff. I honestly don't think he's biased. Because he would do the same thing with AEW if they presented him the opportunity. Then it becomes a question of, should he be doing that stuff at all? I don't think it's really that big of a deal. Like, he's just appearing in the crowd to hype up the audience. He's on their fucking show. Who cares? If they did something dumb, I assume he would, creatively, he would speak out on it. I know people have said, he didn't ask Tony Khan, or Triple H rather, the tough questions, and he did to Tony Khan. That I completely understand. Should he ask Triple H about Vince McMahon? Absolutely. I completely agree with that. And he didn't ask that to Tony Khan. Tony Khan seems like a more open person to that sort of stuff, and he just said no comment. Tony Khan saying no comment to a lot of stuff that he shouldn't have needed to, which was dumb. There's a lot of thoughts here. There's a lot of thoughts. This goes back many months. As far as the most recent outrage shit, neither guy came away from it looking great. I don't think Ariel should have even interacted with him. I think Tony Khan looks worse, though, because he's the one who owns a major wrestling company. He's in more of a position of power than Ariel Helwani. I know Ariel's like the top journalist out there for combat sports, wrestling, whatever. Tony Khan owns a fucking wrestling company. And him out there going back and forth with this dude over something so dumb when Tony instigated it by tweeting him publicly was really, really stupid. Joking or not, it was really dumb. Tony Khan just comes across like a fucking baby sometimes. And I have a lot of respect for the guy. I like Tony Khan. He seems like a nice dude. I've met him before as well. Nice guy, but just his public displays of, I don't know if emotion is the right word, but it's just not smart. Again, it's his prerogative. I don't think it's the wrong thing to do. It's all opinion. People could say, he has every right to clap back or whatever, say shit. Yeah, but it's not a good look, I don't think. I don't think it's a good look. I think it's very dumb. And it just wasn't necessary. He puts his foot in his mouth sometimes and tweets shit when he doesn't fucking need to. I don't even love WWE going back and forth with shots at AEW, but AEW does it all the fucking time when Tony Khan puts his foot in his mouth and says dumb shit that he shouldn't need to. And then when WWE publicly shits back on him, like, okay, cool, or whatever, what did you expect? So, no one really comes out of the situation looking great, but Tony Khan's behavior in particular is just, it's just not ideal. It's just embarrassing, honestly. It's like, what the fuck is this guy doing tweeting during SmackDown? Hashtag AEW Rampage. It's just sad. It's really sad. Though I don't think it contributes to the downfall of AEW, though. Let's not get out of hand. Let's not get carried away. Final question from @BillMeister88 from Twitter. Their question was, there was a tease at Mania, I think you mean Elimination Chamber, to FTR returning with Edge using the Shatter Machine. There was also a picture Dax put on social media with what looked like a WWE envelope in the shot. Do you see them returning to WWE post-Mania? If they do come back after Mania, I don't think it has anything to do with either of those things. The Edge using the Shatter Machine, I think was more of a shout-out. First of all, he loves FTR. Second of all, I think it was more of a shout-out to Cash, who he's really good friends with, because they both lived in the same area at some point. I think Edge actually helped get Dash Wilder, Cash Wheeler, his foot in the door at WWE with John Laurinaitis many years ago. They were in the fucking Edge 24 documentary a few years ago. He's close with FTR, specifically Cash Wheeler. So him using the Shatter Machine was really cool, and they called it that move. I don't think it means that absolutely they're coming back to WWE. I think that's why he did it. The Dax picture on Twitter, I was surprised how many people bought that as like a shoot. Clearly, I mean, Dax Harwood is not a dumb guy. He clearly did that on purpose to get shit stirring, get people talking. He's already talking about maybe going back to WWE on his podcast. It's not like he's completely shut down the possibility. It's not completely random if they go back. If they do go back, it's more because they feel like they would have more creative opportunities over there and get another chance to redeem themselves after their like lackluster last run on the main roster. Triple H being in charge. Yeah, I just think, I don't think the envelope thing had anything to do with it to say, oh, he's definitely going to WWE. That would also be contract tampering. If WWE sent them a fucking envelope, WWE would be in a lot of serious trouble because they're still under contract to AEW. That would be very dumb. So anyway, no, I think that was just him joking around. People taking that seriously was comical. But in all seriousness, though, do I see FTR going back to WWE? If I had to take a guess, like I said with Kenny Omega, I don't think I said this here, but like with Kenny, do I see him going to WWE? It's possible. It's certainly a possibility. Gun to head, what do I see happening? He stays in AEW. I think that's ultimately my choice. Then again, though, I've been very wrong by a lot of this stuff. I think we've said on the show before, if I say gun to head, does Cody Rose go to WWE or stay in AEW? He stays in AEW. Gun to head of Vince McMahon, does he go back or does he stay retired? Oh, he won't come back. And then he does. So I'm always wrong with this sort of stuff, especially in the last year. Maybe take the opposite of my answer. But again, in all seriousness, though, I just look at the situation, what realistically makes sense. I think they should go to WWE. It sounds like Dax wants to go to WWE, just kind of reading in between the lines. It sounds like he wants to go to WWE because it would just make more financial sense for his family to go there. And he also just kind of feels like he has unfinished business there. Cash Wheeler probably doesn't want to go back as well. He just wants more freedom, but you can't split them up. I mean, they have more value together than they do individually. So I'm going to say they go to WWE. I don't say they go there right after WrestleMania. Their deals aren't even up until like mid-April. So it's not like they're showing up on the Raw after WrestleMania. I've always said I do think they leave AEW and then they take a couple months off or they go on the independent scene or whatever. They've already taken a couple months off. I think they will go back to WWE, just not anytime soon. That's my prediction. So to answer your question, yes, it is technically post-Mania. I just don't think it'll be right after WrestleMania. I think it'll be maybe by the summer, if not in 2024. I do think they should leave AEW, though, if they're not going to be, like... They've already been the champions in all these promotions that AEW works with. They've already had the big matches. They haven't had a rematch, the rubber match with the Bucks yet, which is dumb that they haven't gotten there. But the Bucks are busy in the trios division, and they're not teaming with Punk anytime soon. I don't think Punk's coming back, so we're not getting that trio of CM, FTR. But anyway, I do think they will go back to WWE, just not anytime soon. And that's going to do it, guys, for episode 482 here today of #AskGSM for Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023. Thank you, folks, as always, for checking out the show. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So a lot of content coming up soon. I still have to post all my interviews from Rumble Weekend, Chamber Weekend. As you can see, all my live reactions from Chamber Weekend, from SmackDown, the pay-per-view, are up already. So check those out when you get a chance. The interviews will be up at some point. We had an X-Pac interview go up last week. We're going to have interviews with Jake the Snake Roberts and DDP go up ahead of the upcoming episode of WWE Legends on Biography on A&E, so check those out. A lot of shit going on right now. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the bell button to be notified every time a new video goes up. Have an awesome rest of your week, guys. Have an awesome rest of the month of February. Next week, actually, will be our first episode in the month of March, so I look forward to that. Have an awesome one. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.